Hello, my name is Russell Smith. I decided to do this video on a personal subject of mine, and that is the subject of autism. A lot of you may be aware of what autism does. I mean, it's probably all over the national press, but I'd like to give a little insight into what it actually does to us, in terms of how it affects our behavior, how it affects our moods, how it makes us feel. I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, a high-functioning form of autism, back around 11 years ago, and I suppose I do know fairly well what goes on inside the mind of an autistic. Although mainly only my own mind, it changes from person to person, but I'll give you a little description as best I can. Well, you start off any days that you have. Sometimes you wake up, you don't want to get up because you fear what the day will bring. When you get to where you need to be, your mind constantly rattles around like a pinball is going around inside your head and bouncing off all the bumpers. That sort of feeling takes a bit of getting used to each and every time it happens. I still feel depressed by it every single day that it happens. Some days you'll wake up and you'll find that you are a completely blank slate when it comes to emotions. You wake up and you feel no happiness, no joy, no sorrow, no pain, no anger, no smiles, no frowns. You just don't feel the need to perform such actions. They're irrelevant to you, to what you are doing. You become an automaton. And those days are frightening, because you are supposed to react in a certain way. It's the social thing to do, but you just don't. You never react as you should, and that is part of the key point of autism's big dilemma. You're supposed to feel happiness, and sometimes when you're supposed to feel this happiness, you feel anger because it's triggered off another line of thought. I mean, for example, if a friend of yours was telling you that you were getting married, and say you're sitting there thinking of congratulating them, but then it casts your mind back to the fact that you are single, and you feel nothing but hatred, nothing but anger, and it doesn't go away. It never really does. It just sinks into your memory, and you can call it back clear as day, a week, a month, a couple of months, even a year afterwards. That is another curse of the autistic mind, the ability to memorize negative events. I got many stored inside my head. I won't go through them because otherwise you'll end up wanting to tear your hair out. But it's not pretty, because it's a lot of memories. There can be just the tiniest little things that trigger them off. Not only that, but we have obsessions which we develop, we end up cultivating. Sometimes these lead on to other things, but very rarely. Nobody looking in from the outside is able to understand why we have such fascinations, what it means to us. I'd say, take for example motor racing. A lot of people are interested in motor racing because of the shape of the wheel. It's circular, it's infinitesimal, it just keeps on spinning, there's no turning point, there's no change in the direction. The thing's constantly going. sort of thing appeals to the autistic mind. Personally, my thing is numbers. I find them much easier to interpret than words at points. I mean, don't get me wrong, I can read and write perfectly fine, better than a lot of people my age, but I find that numbers are easier to interpret, and I also find numbers are a damn sight easier to interpret than emotions, because I don't know how I'm supposed to react. Is it good news? Is it bad news? Are you smiling? Are you frowning? What about the little twitches in the corner of your mouth? What do those twitches mean? I can't read those. I can't tell if you're trying to hide something. I can't tell what you're doing. All this subtle body language, it completely washes over us. The gentle intonation of the voices, where you introduce a slight anger straight over, doesn't mean a thing to us. You could just be talking to us straight. You need to get this done. You need to get this done. You need to get this done. That's how it comes out to us. And we will go and do it, and we will do it with the same urgency, whereas somebody who can understand the intonations would feel the urgency from the slightly angered tone in the voice. So there is that as well. When it comes to interpersonal skills, no, just no. You think about, you know, water cooler talk or small talk or casual conversations. That doesn't mean anything to us. That has no basis. There's no subject to it. I mean, if it was about work, then that's fine. If it's, we must do this paperwork, no problem. If it's about a person, this person did such a thing, they proposed that, they asked them out on a date, then I suppose that's okay too. The real problem is the jumping off point. Autistics cannot provide the jumping off point. We tend to do it in specialised subjects, and that makes us unapproachable. But we try our damnedest to fit in. It's just society prefers extroverts. They don't want the introverts, because the introverts are background people. They're not the ones of the forefront. They're not the Donald Trumps. They're not the Robert Downey Jr.'s of the world. They're not right up front there. They're not Oprah Winfrey. They're not all these famous people who have come out and been vocal, being supportive and being angry and being vicious and making the news. I mean, would you ever consider Saddam Hussein or Colonel Gaddafi, or would you consider Adolf Hitler to be introverted? And they come out in front of these crowds and they rise people, and people find them appealing. You put an introvert up on the stage, and people are doing this. Well, I can't understand what he's saying. Why is he mumbling? I don't find him interesting at all. Can somebody get up here who can actually relate to us? Introverts are not as easily relatable, and autistics, as I've said, are by and large introverted. So is that. Leading on from that, introversion tends to go fairly hand in hand with shyness. Shyness is a major issue when it comes to the world of work. For example, the job interview. You've got an extroverted attitude, you go in the job interview and you can talk some absolute utter bullshit, and you can go out there cleaner than you just hopped in the bathtub and had a pleasant old rinse. You come out squeaky clean. Introverts will go in there, they will shuffle, they'll shake, they can tell the truth, be absolutely beautifully honest, and they'll come out a quivering nervous wreck because they have been they have been scrutinized. Autistics is even worse, because they can be read like books. Their emotions are worn very much on their sleeves. If they're angry, it shows. They're happy, it shows. If there's something worrying them, by Jove, it shows. It shows a lot. I really find such situations difficult, close quarters with people I don't know. No, just don't put us in that situation, because it will end up uncomfortable for everybody. The people who are asking the questions to autistics, the autistics themselves. You will be amazed by the amount of silence that will pass between you. Trying to keep the conversation going is a pain in the neck with an autistic, and as much as we try, it's pretty much ingrained that we are not great conversationalists, we're not great team workers. You know, maybe we found that at this point you kick in, say, Darwinian evolution theory, you'll find that autistics back in those days were the first to die, because they didn't communicate with the rest of their tribe, because they weren't in tune with them. They didn't follow the same pattern when hunting. They didn't follow the crime pattern because they didn't communicate, or they couldn't communicate as well. So perhaps, you know, perhaps the autistics are alive by sheer chance nowadays. Maybe we're not supposed to be. You know, I tend to question myself on that a lot. Why do I have this? Where's my answer? Where's the cure? Where's the treatment? And it doesn't help that the services that we are provided are just plain fucking useless. Because the government has just completely, utterly rip-roared through every last penny that such services can have, and they've left a lot of people wanting. Adult autistics are no different. If you are adult, you're autistic, and you have an IQ of over 70, they ignore the autistic part and say, you're adult, you have an IQ of over 70. You are capable of being independent. They don't care about the autism, despite the fact that it's absolutely hindering you from the start to the very end. That's just plain bloody ignorance. I just can't understand why they don't see our point of view. It really, really drives me up the freaking wall. That these people, these highfalutin power pushers, can be so blind to turn around and say, yep, you're capable enough because your brain has enough connections in it. Just because all the connections are there doesn't mean that they're connected up in the right places. So that makes me very... it enrages me that they can be so pushy. So I thought I'd just provide you with a glimpse into the uphill struggle that is being autistic. I hope that you find this interesting, marvellous, shocking, disappointing, and absolutely educational, because sometimes it is necessary to get your voice heard, because if you don't, people will end up suffering, people will end up dying. People have committed suicide over this sort of thing. I can't stand by and watch myself or anybody else do the same thing, because I have come pretty close at points. Right, this is Russell Smith, and I bid you a good night.